We can hardly move about, surf the internet, communicate, or do our shopping without all our data being recorded, stored, and analysed, whether it's through our smartphone, discount card, e-government login, medical file, search query, digital thermostat, or Facebook account. Are we the last generation for whom privacy and freedom were seen as self-evident? Will our digital life be worth more than our real life? Are there ways to escape this digital dragnet that is closing in on us? This is what we can expect.
The 21st century is a very bad century for paranoid schizophrenics. Paranoia should be the default stance of everybody.
If I talk to my girlfriend, I've forced her to install an application on her phone that we can talk encryptedly.
Remember, these things happened. They may never happen to you. Then again, they may.
This is Backlight, about resisting the digital dragnet.
A child born today will grow up with no conception of privacy at all. They'll never know what it means to have a private moment to themselves, an unrecorded, unanalyzed thought. And that's a problem, because privacy matters. Privacy is what allows us to determine who we are and who we want to be.
Who we are and who will we be in this new digital reality? A reality in which we give our data, willingly or not, to both Silicon Valley and the intelligence services. We have surfed past activists, forecasters, and even a science fiction writer. People who are, in their own way, combating this dragnet. A dragnet that whistleblower Edward Snowden made visible.
Almost daily, the espionage war being waged grows more intense. Today, it is common knowledge that espionage agents are operating everywhere.
And I don't think the Snowden documents has been a surprise to anyone. The sad part about that is that we kind of understood that that was going on.
I had a mixed reaction when I first heard about the Edward Snowden revelations, a mixture of bafflement that anybody was surprised by this, followed by slight startlement about the extent of it, and astonishment that the NSA's internal security procedures were so weak that they had allowed him to get away with all this stuff.
Learn how to recognize the approach of an enemy agent, and if ever approached, what to do.
In theory, we had, oh, of course they can do this, of course they can do that. But there's a big difference between having the theory and having the proof.
Dass man einerseits sehen kann, Technologie macht das möglich. Andererseits, dass es aber auch komplett grenzenlos ausgenutzt wird, nur weil es möglich ist, ohne dass irgendjemand sagt, aber hallo, das überschreitet Grenzen der Grundrechte, wirklich fundamentaler Menschenrechte, die werden damit ausgehebelt. Und diese ganzen Sicherheitsnetze, die waren alle gerissen. Nichts davon hat uns noch geschützt. Wir waren praktisch nackig.
There's another agency, just as dedicated as the East German MFS, which carries on espionage against us.
Whether it's the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians, and that has happened to be my focus of research. So for me, when we saw some of those programs come out in America, I wasn't shocked. I mean, I didn't have a profound existential crisis. And now.
Es war für mich so ein Zwischending zwischen rational Dinge wiedererkennen, die ich schon einmal kannte, aber sie emotional auch wieder durchleben und fühlen. Und das hat mich wirklich zutiefst geschockt, weil das waren Gefühle, von denen ich dachte, die müsste ich in meinem ganzen Leben nie wieder fühlen.
To get an idea of what it's like to be pursued by the new digital superpowers, we drive across the bridge from Denmark to Sweden, on our way to Peter Sunde, one of the founders of the Pirate Bay, a file-sharing site that allows users to share films and music for free.
We were accused of aiding with possible infringement of copyright. We got convicted of it. Prison sentences and like 15 million euros, I think, in
You?
Yes.
You have to pay 15 million
Euros, yeah. Combined, all of us, we have to share 15 million euros in debt. So we're on the top 10 list of people owing money in Sweden.
Peter Sunde has quit the Pirate Bay. But the sky-high fine hanging over his head has not interfered with his resistance work.
So you have this huge fine over your head?
Yes.
But it doesn't bother you?
No, it doesn't bother me. We're all financial slaves in this system we have right now. Most of my friends, they have a student loan or they have a loan for their house or their apartment, whatever. And they have this belief in the back of their mind that they can actually repay the whole debt. The only way to be totally financially free is either by being so much in debt that you give up the idea of having money as everyone else wants to, or being the 0.1% that have all of the money.
And did you go to prison?
No, I didn't go to prison. I'm still fighting the court case.
According to the judge, these three guys are criminals. They ensure that millions of people worldwide can download films, music files and computer programs.
Ser man det som en film så är det här ungefär när
You're still in court cases now? Is there sort of an end at the horizon, or
there are always different court cases.
So how many court cases are there?
I don't even know how many I'm sued in. I'm probably sued in over 20 countries. Kuwait, I know, and Turkey, and Denmark. Holland, I think, is also one of the countries where we sued in.
You're not allowed to go to the United States?
I'm probably allowed to go there, but I wouldn't be allowed to leave. So I wouldn't go there. It's a way of kind of sending out the message that if you're doing this, you're an enemy of the state. We're going to treat you as an enemy, and we're going to make it hard for you to have a normal life. I think that the biggest problem that the US government had with us is that we were saying that we don't like what you're saying and you don't have control over us and we're doing something in a different way. It's not about copyright itself, it's about control over the future communication tool.
Peter Sunde's fight is about who accesses and controls the data that flows through our information networks.
So the idea with the internet was to make it very decentralized. So this computer could talk to this and this computer using different ways of reaching them. But because it's very expensive to build different cables going different places, we've built central hubs of traffic. This is called an internet exchange. And in Holland, you have one of the biggest in Europe called AMSIX, which is in Amsterdam, where probably 500-600 internet providers are exchanging traffic with each other in one small room. And of course, if I was the government, I could go there and say, I just want a copy of all of the traffic passing these providers. You connect the cable and you press a couple of buttons and the traffic will actually come to you. And no one can see that you're actually tapping into it. It's that easy.
Little by little, we've ended up in our own science fiction story. That's why we talked to Charlie Stross, a science fiction writer who announced that his novels are being overtaken by reality.
Stuff that your smartphone can tell the intelligence services if they want to get that data include where you are, where you've been, where you're going. They can remotely switch on the microphone and turn it into a bugging device. They can remotely switch on the cameras and use it as a video device if you're pointing your phone at anything of interest. The spread of networking technologies throughout the general public has given the intelligence agencies an opportunity to massively extend their remit without anybody really noticing.
Charlie Stross started his working life as a pharmacist and programmer. But after a failed dot-com startup, he was relieved to become a science fiction writer.
The first novel, Halting State, was about massively multiplayer online worlds, such MMOs, such as World of Warcraft, and the co-option of those worlds for security, industrial state, and spying. And lo, in the Snowden revelations, the NSA has so many agents running around World of Warcraft and Second Life that they had to set up an internal committee to ensure they weren't spying on each other. They thought the jihadis would be using these games as meeting points to exchange information. Science fiction can't always keep up with reality in this century.
To protect the future of America, the defense techniques of tomorrow had to be discovered now. They were discovered in electronics. New concepts, new tools, new weapons.
I am still boggling somewhat at the ease with which he was able to obtain the huge amount of files that he has subsequently begun leaking. Not merely at their content, which to some extent was predictable if you visualize these organizations as large bureaucracies seeking to justify their own existence. The slides should be viewed as internal sales pitches. They are attempts to get the attention of other people within the organization to provide backing for a given entrepreneurial project run by middle managers. They look eerily like any other corporate PowerPoint sales pitch within a large multinational, only with the addition of lots of eagles and stars and stripes flags.
Every instrument in this room is constantly monitoring, testing, pulse-taking, controlling. To it come continuous streams of data, which it continuously absorbs and stores. It has memory. And this computer is on the job around the clock with 24-hour-a-day reliability.
The illusion that state security can be assured if only they can find out enough information about everybody seems to be pervasive, keeps recurring, and for some reason, we always believe it. The illusion persists partly because everybody in the security system wants to have the illusion that they're doing something productive and contributing to our safety, partly because they have a job and they need to protect the job by demonstrating its own viability and importance. But they're now applying wartime protocols in everyday peacetime. The idea that a scattered group of fanatical radical terrorists who are more effective at blowing themselves up than killing other people are an existential threat to the Western democracies is, if you take 2 steps back and look at it coldly, absolutely ludicrous.
And as long as we're on guard, the future of America is secure.
To better understand the people who build network systems, we talked to Eleanor Saitta. She worked as an IT security consultant for companies in the financial sector for many years. Now she has decided to become an ethical hacker and dedicate herself to developing software that champions freedom of expression and online privacy. She hasn't had a fixed address for several years.
The folks who work in national intelligence in whatever different country, for the most part, are honestly trying to do what they see as the right thing, right? They are in a position, they've been told, your job is to spy on people, go get all of this information and do a thing. But it used to be that the economics was really what kept them in check. Spying was expensive, You can only spy on some of the people some of the time, and that's what makes it such that you don't end up with these kind of dystopian horrors. But now we're dealing with a situation where spying got cheap. The number that I like to quote is 13 cents a user a day. If you take the budget of the US Directorate of National Intelligence, the number of internet users, that's how much they spend to surveil every user every day, is 13 cents per user per day. If they can get access to all of everyone's contacts and every communication and stuff at that price, of course they're going to do it. They would be crazy not to, almost regardless of whether or not it's going to result in output, because they've been told to gather all of this information and come up with the best picture of the world that they can. And once you're in the mindset of more information equals a better picture, which is also not actually true, but that's the mindset that they've been operating from within, then of course you're going to try to gather everything.
And when you start doing that, you will realize that you can also use the data for other things. Like maybe you started with collecting for finding terrorists, but all of a sudden you realize that you have a problem with people, not paying enough taxes because they're using, offshore companies, whatever. So you have this sliding scale. You have a really good intention to begin with, but all of a sudden it turns out that you can use it for everything because it's so convenient.
To understand what it's like to live in a totalitarian state, we meet Anke Domscheit-Berg. She grew up in East Germany and was 21 when the Berlin Wall came down. After working for Accenture and Microsoft, She is now standing as a candidate for the Pirate Party in the upcoming European Parliament elections.
Wir haben alle gewusst, dass wir in zwei Umgebungen leben. Dass es eine Umgebung gibt, in der man frei sprechen kann, zu Hause, in der Familie, unter Freunden. Und dass es eine öffentliche Umgebung gibt, die Schule, unbekannte Menschen, wo man aufpassen muss, was man sagt, wo Wörter gefährlich werden können. Wir haben also wirklich schon in der 1. Klasse mit 6 Jahren, da habe ich schon gewusst, dass Wörter gefährlich sein können. Und da hatte ich schon, wie alle anderen DDR-Bürger, diese kleine Schere im Kopf, meinen eigenen Zensor, der meine Meinungsfreiheit von innen heraus beschränkt hat, aus Vorsicht. Das ist ein ganz furchtbares Gefühl, aber heute fühlt es sich noch viel schlimmer. Denn damals konnte ich auf der Straße gehen oder Freunde besuchen, wir konnten zu dritt an einem Tisch sitzen und wenn das nicht zufällig ein informeller Informant der Staatssicherheit dabei war, dann konnte man sich sicher sein, dass keiner zuhört. Heute gibt es die Sicherheit nicht mehr. Es hängen auch Überwachungskameras überall im öffentlichen Raum herum. Die können auch aufzeichnen, wo ich mich bewege, mit wem, was ich da mache. Es ist heute die Überwachung viel umfassender und totaler.
But would you describe yourself as paranoid?
The 21st century is a very bad century for paranoid schizophrenics. Paranoia should be the default stance of everybody.
We are always expecting us to be digitally monitored. That's like the default now. If you don't know how to circumvent being monitored, you are monitored.
I was already taking a lot of steps to avoid the broad dragnet stuff to the extent that you can do that, so I don't worry about it.
You mean because you secure yourself so good, or because...
No, because there's just not that much we can do.
But if you want to be a resistance fighter nowadays, what kind of character traits do you need as a person?
I think it's really hard to not be a very strange person. It's not really possible in today's society to not have a phone that's working, you know, because you're just going to lose friends.
At the Chaos Communication Congress in Hamburg, people who have warned against the dangers of the surveillance state have congregated for years. It's a gathering of hackers from all over the world, where people like Eleanor Saitta, Glenn Greenwald, the journalist who broke Snowden's NSA files, and WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange are welcomed as heroes.
I'm not saying don't join the CIA. No, go and join the CIA. Go in there. Go into the ballpark and get the ball and bring it out with the...
Blame the NSA?
Is it here or the embassy that they're spying on the most?
Also ich denke immer darüber nach, wie sicher meine Kommunikation gerade ist. Und manchmal geht es ja auch im Laufe eines Gesprächs, dass sich irgendwas entwickelt und dann sage ich dann irgendwann meinem Gegenüber, stopp, du hast ein Handy dabei, ich habe ein Handy dabei, da können wir jetzt nicht weiterreden. Also entweder wir reden ein andermal weiter oder wir sorgen dafür, dass die Telefone woanders sind. Das mache ich schon. Also ich habe auch schon lange so einen kleinen Aufkleber auf dem Kameraauge meines Laptops, dass das nicht nebenbei kleine Filme von meiner Wohnung schießt und wer da gerade davor sitzt und drauf guckt. Und sowas mache ich auch.
If I talk to my girlfriend, I've forced her to install an application on her phone that we can talk encryptedly, and she thinks it's inconvenient and sends me things on text messages, and I get annoyed by that.
Please don't send me I love you.
You know, that's totally fine, but I feel very annoyed sometimes that I can't be alone, that I can't be by myself, that I can't have private thoughts and private ideas and private discussions.
Also ich verschlüssele Kommunikation im Internet, auch welche, wo ich nur sage, oh, ich komme eine halbe Stunde später zum Mittagessen, das wird dann auch verschlüsselt, weil ich glaube, man muss auch einen Heuhaufen produzieren, der sehr groß ist. Man muss wenigstens das Leben sehr schwer machen für diese Geheimdienste, um die Nadeln, die geschützt werden müssen, noch besser zu schützen.
They can, if they really care, attempt to compromise your laptop or my laptop. It's not that they couldn't do it. It's that do they want to spend the money, right? If it goes up to $10,000 a user a day, then they simply can't afford to spend that kind of money for everyone, which is great, you know, because then they're going to say, well, who do we really care about? Well, we're going to go after the guys who we're actually supposed to be going after, which is the whole point.
But the data that was collected for your convenience, and thus became a rewarding source for intelligence agencies, was willingly supplied by all of us to the Facebooks, Googles, and Twitters of our world.
There are thousands with money to burn, looking for unsuspecting targets for exploitation. There may be someone right now taking your measure, probing for a vulnerable area, whether it be loneliness, indebtedness, desire for sex, easy money, or the sporting life. All vulnerable areas ripe for exploitation.
Your smartphone is not just one computer, it's actually somewhere between 4 and 20 computers, flying in one package. One of the things people don't appreciate is how many computers are out there and how fast we're producing them and how cheap they are. There are computers in washing machines, there are computers in your car, there are computers inside other computers.
One of those computers is made by Nest, which manufactures smart thermostats. Google recently bought Nest for 2.3 billion euros.
Also wenn Google so ein Unternehmen kauft, heißt das, Google will nicht nur wissen, wonach ich suche, mit wem ich was schreibe.
A company like Google really wants to be everywhere. They want to capture every single data stream that you generate.
Welche Fotos ich mache, ne? Picasa ist ja auch Google, welche Filmchen ich angucke und mache und schön oder doof finde, wie bei YouTube, gehört auch zu Google.
They're capturing what's happening in your car. They're capturing what's happening in your bedroom with the thermostat and the smoke detector. They're capturing what's happening in your pockets through your phone.
Jetzt wollt ihr auch noch wissen, wann ich meine Waschmaschine anhab und wie oft? Wie viel mein Herd verbraucht und wann der an ist? Die können auf diese Weise sehen, wann ist jemand im Haus und wann nicht.
I mean, eventually I think they are going to buy a company that manufactures smart beds and capture what's happening in your bed. And I think ultimately they would want to know what you're dreaming about.
Und wenn ich das mit all den anderen Informationen zusammenschalte, kann ich wirklich komplettest mögliche Profile über einen Menschen erstellen und seine sozialen Geflechte. Und das ist der feuchte Traum einer Stasi.
Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, all of these companies, they want to collect data for a financial benefit, and that is one discussion that you should have, like, why are we paying with our privacy and integrity to these companies and still thinking it's free? And that we also, on top of that, we centralized all of our communication to be on maybe 10 different platforms and owned by 10 different companies, basically all of them from the United States.
Those 10 companies recently became 9 companies when Facebook bought messaging service WhatsApp for almost 14 billion euros. If data becomes the raw material of our economy and citizens start collecting and trading that data, then we should start asking fundamental questions about the effect this will have on the functioning of our democracy, says Evgeny Morozov.
I have a dumb phone in my pocket, you know, like I just don't collect data about myself. So my decision is very rigidly absolute here. I just don't have the temptation of selling it because there is nothing to sell.
Evgeny Morozov was born in Belarus, Europe's last dictatorship. The author of To Save Everything, Click Here is a thorn in the side of Silicon Valley's techno-utopianists.
The fact that all the data that Google and Facebook are right now collecting will eventually be put to uses other than advertising. It might be used to price risk. What's the risk that you'll get into an accident if you're driving? What's the risk that your house will set on fire? And if that's what they can do, then they can also be in the insurance business, they can be in the banking business, they can be in many other businesses. And they are actually probably standing to disrupt the banking industry and the insurance industry in the next 5 to 10 years. we also see changes in the logic of many of these commercial players. And instead of assuming that you don't want to track yourself because you just care about your privacy or just because you're too lazy, they'll start assuming that you don't do that because you have something to hide. That's how people who don't have a smartphone or people who leave no data trails already perceived. And I just don't know why we actually want to move to a society where people who are guilty of nothing have to take proactive steps to prove that they're not guilty, right? There's a kind of a very Kafkaesque situation, which I think we would rather avoid, but I think that would be the consequence. And that would be the consequence not because it's driven by surveillance state or national security state. Like, you can even forget about those two and you'll end up in this situation solely because of the market consequences. Because again, reputation will become the key, right, to all of this. And as long as it's the key to all of this, you will be proactively forced to do something to shape it.
That's also kind of the thing that a lot of us activists were talking and thinking quite a lot about, that we need to place some sort of information out there to look less suspect. I have a Facebook profile that I used to have before, and I decided to stop using Facebook. So what I did is that I let my profile still be there, because then no one can pretend to be me. That's another issue, that everyone expects everyone to be on Facebook. So it's still there.
It's a dummy.
It's a dummy. You have to blend into the crowd. Otherwise you stand out from being someone who doesn't want to be in the crowd.
Can we even exist without these 9 companies that control our online communications? And how much leeway do we have to circumvent this invisible digital dragnet?
What if I don't want to be filmed?
You do a choice every time you go and use one web service. For instance, if you decide to be on Facebook, you've taken a choice that you want to be open with your information. This is information that will be stored about you forever. You will never be able to delete it. That is a choice. So if you decide not to be on Facebook, for instance, you are one sort of activist. And the more people that would do that would also build up kind of the need for another platform instead of Facebook. So we could evolve away from that.
All communication on today's networks are being monitored by government agencies and private companies. The politicians are not going to stop it. They're actually asking for more. That's why we decided to build a messaging platform where no one can spy on you, not even us. Other apps are funded by ads or selling your data.
There is a saying, if you're not paying for it, you are the product.
We're interested in helping, not selling users. That is why we need you to fund Hemlis.
It's not important to us to be the biggest platform in the world. It's more important for us that we are taking users from less secure platforms so that they have to increase their security. So instead of us becoming the new Facebook or whatever, we want the other platforms to be able to realize that if we don't give the same security to our users, they will leave. So it becomes a financial and commercial interest of theirs to compete on giving good safety and good security to their users.
The elephant in the room is that most consumers who are not geeks, who don't go to Computer Chaos Congress in Berlin, those people don't really have such concerns, and they actually have economic incentives to record everything that happens to them and then to figure out how to make money off of it. And if that's the environment in which we're in, then we have to be doing very different kinds of interventions, and I haven't seen them so far.
You sound very disappointed.
Well, I am. Again, in part because I think the debate so far has been extremely boring. For me, surveillance is one of the many problems, and it might not even be the most important problem that stems from the circulation of data. And for me, the greatest problem comes from proliferation of data. To me, that's the danger, that armed with more and more data, our bureaucratic institutions would be able to do things which are good for us as consumers, but not necessarily good for us as citizens. So instead of going after the causes and root causes of issues, they just go about the symptoms.
Why is the collection of data a danger to us as citizens? Morozov argues that if we focus solely on data, we'll fail to recognize a problem's underlying causes.
Look at for example, the use of data that might be coming out of, say, a country like Yemen. So you can go and monitor what every single kid in Yemen is doing on Facebook. You can go and monitor what they're doing with their cell phones and rank kids in Yemen based on how likely they are to blow up an airplane. Then you have top 10 kids in Yemen, and you just say, well, fine, we're not going to let those people board the plane to America, right? Problem of terrorism solved. To me, a somewhat more ambitious and I think more democratic and more politically conscious way to go about that problem would actually to stop for a little bit and put the data aside and ask a very simple question as to why those kids actually want to blow up American airplanes. And if you do that, you might actually discover that the reason why they do that might have something to do with the use of drone warfare against their fathers.
Counterterrorism is probably best practiced by policing, intelligence-led policing, wherein it is treated as a civil issue. But unfortunately, the gradual militarization of all our policing processes in the Western world and the availability of these tools to the state means that the state's response has been that of a carpenter whose only tool is a hammer. Every problem then looks like a nail.
So if you want to fight a problem like obesity, smartphones, for example, right? It allows you to both things, two things. It allows you to record data, so you actually know what people are eating, you know how much people are exercising, so you can actually capture everything about their activity, right? And then figure out where on that curve they are, how unhealthy they are, how unproductive they are. And then the fact that you have the screen and you have the ability to intervene allows you then to generate the perfect nudge and to get them to do what the policymaker wants them to do. We're actually entering a new mode of politics where we are no longer talking about what matters. We're not talking about why things happen, right? That the reason why we're obese is because we are stupid, or we don't exercise enough, or we just basically don't have the strong will. It's not because there is no income for us to buy healthy food, or we don't have a car to drive to the farmer's market, or it's because there is no infrastructure where we can exercise, or it's because perhaps food companies have so much power in Washington that they can advertise to kids in any way they like, or they don't want food labeling. I mean, there are all sorts of bigger structural issues that are not at all reflective of who we are and what we do and of our failings that are also responsible for a problem like obesity, right? But in order to grasp all of those potentialities and to prevent them from happening, and then to also figure out why we shouldn't treat data as property, because the more we treat it as property, the more data people will sell to Google, right? To figure that all out, you need a much more complex picture of economics and structural changes in the economy, what's happening in terms of finance, financialization, all of those things, which are currently not on the table at most of the gatherings of computer people. Again, if you look at the gatherings at the Chaos Computer Club, I mean, those are very good people. All of them have very noble goals. But just for the sole reason they are mostly technologists, they would rather talk about cryptography rather than financialization.
Even so, at the Chaos Communication Congress, an appeal was made to the responsibility of architects of computer systems to think about how to change the system from the inside. The hackers and IT people gathered there are still the most obvious people to kickstart reforms.
If you write a line of code, that line of code is either supporting the existing systems in the existing context or undermining it or changing it in some other way, right? There are no neutral actions. It's not necessarily good, it's not necessarily bad, but it's not neutral either. You can't just build systems without thinking about how they change the world anymore.
There is a worrying lack of ethical grounding in a lot of the tech sector. The people who build IT tend, where they have a political ideology, to be naive libertarians who believe that this stuff will empower everybody who uses it, not realizing that very often it will be used as a tool of oppression.
The people that are creating the new infrastructure, they're all coming from this well-off class that don't care about issues. They only want new technology that's cool, and they don't really care what it's used for because they don't see problems. They don't understand the concept of being in a position where you're not as lucky as they are.
So we need to figure out how geeks can start talking about politics and economics, because I don't really expect people who are concerned with the economy or politics to go and learn cryptography.
So you expect something from geeks, but you don't see it happening. Why is it not?
I mean, maybe I'm blind, but no, do you? No, I don't see that happening. I mean, I'm trying to make that happen. I mean, you can't blame me. I mean, I write an essay every week, but yes, I don't see that happening.
Why do you think it's not happening?
Well, because this is hard stuff. You need to sit at home and read Weber and Habermas. I mean, it's not playing World of Warcraft. I mean, what? It's not like you're going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly understand how the modern system of bureaucracy has come into existence in the last 2 centuries. I mean, it's not the kind of thing you can read up on Wikipedia in 2 hours. So I'm not blaming them for not immediately grasping everything that they ought to grasp about how the modern state functions. I mean, that would be naive to expect them to do that. But I do think that there needs to be a reorientation of this debate. I mean, look, in 5 years, whenever you walk down the street, you'll get a pop-up on your phone telling you, would you want to trade all your data from today for 50 euros? Most people, I'm sure, would be saying yes.
First, beware of the stranger you may meet at the bar or in the street who goes out of his way to cultivate you, plies you with favors in order to win your friendship. It is just possible he may have something else in mind. Secondly, recognize the modus operandi of the hostile intelligence agent. Almost a standard pattern to lure the unsuspecting victim into a trap until he is in so deep there seems no way out. Thirdly, and above all, if you suspect an approach by an agent, know what to do. Remember, we cannot be too alert, for no one is immune to an approach by a member of this worldwide network.
And that's what I've been trying to do, is trying to show that, great, let's continue doing work in cryptography, great, let's continue doing work on laws. But if we just do those 2 things, in 5 years, we're going to be hit with a much more profound realization that, neither those tools nor laws are actually wanted by citizens, or most citizens anyway, because the dissidents will still want the cryptography and they will still want the laws. But people who have very little to hide are going to profit from this new market incentives, thus perhaps making it impossible for dissidents to exist as a group, structurally.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
What kind of sacrifices I would have to make to be a resistance fighter in such a surveillance state?
20 years of wearing a suit, speaking in front of television cameras, and going into a career in politics. Because this is not the kind of campaign you win with a gun or a balaclava. This is one that is in for the long haul. It is going to rely on changing the regulatory frameworks by which we live our lives. And I'm afraid to say it's a political problem.
So you never met a politician who you thought...
I mean, look, I've met quite a few politicians, many of them in Europe, who are willing to listen and with whom I talk every now and then. The problem is that, they're not going to turn it into a major political and social movement that it ought to be, unless they can discursively liberate themselves from this bullshit empire built by Silicon Valley. And I see very few positive developments from politicians who, again, prefer just go and bash the NSA. You look at European politicians. What do they want? They want to go and bash America. Let's go bash NSA. Let's go bash Google. And let's go and empower, Deutsche Telekom. Because, well, great. What? So we empower Deutsche Telekom, and then you have the German surveillance services doing exactly the kind of surveillance that NSA is doing. So instead of having surveillance that is made in the USA, you're now having surveillance made in Germany.
Whether we're being tracked by the United States or Germany, how can we make sure our children will know what a non-recorded and unanalyzed thought is? Which politician can take on the pervasive influence of Silicon Valley?
Wie gebruikt er elke dag internet? Bijna allemaal? En wat doen jullie dan op het internet? Wat doe jij? Spelletjes? YouTube, natuurlijk. En jij? Typecursus, goed zo. Alleen weten we eigenlijk wel wat het is. En hoe het werkt. En wie de baas is.
We live in an increasingly surveilled age one of the side effects of this is politicians come in for more scrutiny. Everybody has regrettable party moments at some point in their life. When all of this data is online, searchable and retrievable, it's either we're going to have to become a lot more tolerant of our politicians' foibles and personal habits, or if they are aware of where they're going sufficiently far in advance, what sort of person deliberately from age 8 controls their social media presence to make a political career possible? That's just inconceivably alien.
Ga maar eens even kijken, wat kan je vinden als je jezelf opzoekt?
Ik heb dus zwaansticker, maar als ik dat opzoek, dan krijg ik alleen maar stickers van zwaan.
Hey, dat is mijn vader.
Ja?
Ik ga kijken wat voor geheimen hij heeft.
Nevertheless, this is the new digital reality, which we must learn to navigate, even while we want new laws and regulations. Someone who, despite his reputation, is standing for election at the upcoming European Parliament elections is Peter Sunde.
So I think looking at the internet as something that people have a right to, and first of all, before we decide what kind of infringement we can do on people's privacy, we should decide what kind of rights people should have, and then we should see what we can infringe on.
Is there one country where your hope of first change is focused on?
I think Iceland will be the first country. Because of the small size of population and the high level of technology and the knowledge they have about technology, as well as them having unlimited access to electricity, because they have that for free, and they have cooling for free for servers and so on, which is one of the big costs associated with the internet. They have all of the possibilities, and they have the movement there as well to actually do something really good and interesting.
So will you have Hamlet also on Iceland as a...
So it's haml.is, so it's an Icelandic domain already for a reason, except that the name, which means secret in Swedish, is really funny. It's also a decision we took that we wanted an Icelandic domain name, because that's one of the most protected domain names right now.
Sure, let's do something in Iceland, but I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, those apps need to be built for people who are doing important work in social movements and dissidents, and people who actually need secure tools to continue the kind of very dangerous work they're doing. But it's not going to be of much use to the general population until the general population figures out that they cannot continue consuming data and entertainment and paying for it with their personal information. That's the change that needs to happen intellectually. Without that change, those tools are going to be used by 1% of the population.
Aber wer ist der Feind?
Das ist wirklich eine komplexe Frage. Es wäre mir zu einfach zu sagen, der US-amerikanische Geheimdienst. Es würde mir auch noch nicht reichen, wenn man sagt, es sind eigentlich alle Geheimdienste. Wir sind auch ein Feind in dieser Situation, wenn wir diese kleine Schere im Kopf haben und wenn wir nichts dagegen tun. Wenn wir aus Feigheit still bleiben, wenn wir aus Faulheit und Trägheit nicht auf die Straße gehen, wenn wir Angst vor Konsequenzen haben und deshalb unsere Klappe halten, dann sind wir unser eigener Feind. Denn nur dann ermöglichen wir, dass diese Macht missbraucht wird. Wir legitimieren diese Macht. Wir wählen diese Politiker. Wir wählen sie nicht ab, wir stürmen nicht ihre Gebäude, wir lassen sie machen und wir gehen weiter einkaufen und gucken Fernsehen und machen alles wie zuvor. Und dann sind es ein apathisches Volk, der größte Feind für die Demokratie, weil die ermöglichen, dass Macht missbraucht wird.
Hallo Berlin! Ich wünschte, ihr wärt 100-mal so viele. Vor 25 Jahren ist hier in Berlin die Mauer gefallen. Genau da, hinter diesem Tor auf der Mauer, habe ich am 11. November mit meiner Mutter gestanden. Und mit ungefähr 10-mal so viele Menschen, wie gerade hier stehen.
Mensen lopen arm in arm, hand in hand, hier over het asfalt, klimmen over de hekken en lopen richting West-Berlijn.
Ik was nog wel volgend.
Ik wil alleen maar kijken. Alleen maar kijken, niet naar de overkant.
staan dus volop mensen op de muren. Hier vandaan is niet goed te zien hoeveel. Het zijn heel erg veel. Er gaat weer meer politie daar rechts. Wim, daar rechts gaat weer meer politie erop af. Op zijn minst 300 politiemensen zijn nu daar in die omgeving. Gewapend, heb ik gehoord. Maar mensen hier, jonge mensen hier, die zeggen ze kunnen toch niet schieten, want ze worden bekeken. Daar komt het ongeveer op neer. Nou, we zijn nu vlakbij de Brandenburger Tor. Niet te ver, niet te dichtbij. En nu is het vol met mensen die juichen, in hun handen klappen, schreeuwen. Vielen Glück!
Wir müssen uns erinnern, wie wir damals die Macht hatten, als Masse, das Volk. Es hieß ja immer damals der Slogan, wir sind das Volk. Das war ein sehr kraftvoller Slogan, wo wir alle gespürt haben, wie viele wir sind und wie viel Macht wir dadurch haben, dass wir als ganz viele durch die Straße laufen. Und dieses Gefühl, die Erinnerung, muss man den Menschen wiedergeben. Alice Walker hat mal gesagt, dass der Hauptgrund, warum Menschen keine Macht haben, der ist, dass sie glauben, keine Macht zu haben. Und das erleben wir heute wieder. Es gehen so wenig Menschen auf die Straße, um zu protestieren, weil sie glauben, es sei egal.
Sind Sie froh?
Bent u blij?
Kan je niet staan, dat dan?
Dat kan ik niet zeggen.
Maar Sie sind froh, ik kan dat zien.
U bent toch blij? Ik kan het toch zien? Hij is blij.
So the space for civil disobedience, space for dissent, space for taking an active stance as to whether you want to do something or not to do something, I think that counts as well. You see, there is this very interesting phenomenon that's happening right now. We are being deprived of an opportunity to decide not to do something. I mean, I think that will result in us not having that space in which our subjectivity can actually emerge, right, and get formed in an environment where we still have space, if you will, to make decisions that are of our own will and are driven still by some political and ethical and moral idea of what's good and what's not good. The fact that we will all be getting very complacent, boring, and extremely safe individuals, I think that's the danger.
Thank you for watching. For more on this subject, take a look at the playlist. You can also watch this recommended video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and we'll keep you updated on our documentaries.